Mike, thank you for joining me on this third podcast that we are doing. I'm loving having you here to talk to me all about the world of medtech. I'm really interested, though, particularly about your background and your knowledge and history, to understand a little bit more about what market access is.
Yeah.
Now, I know that that's probably a big topic to start on, but in a nutshell, what is market access when it relates to medical technology?
Yeah. So when it relates to medical technologies, I see it as the science of demonstrating benefits of the technology to patients, who are the most important part of the story, to care providers that use the technologies, to payers that pay for them, but also ensuring that the manufacturer of the product benefits from commercializing them as well. So comparing to the principles of marketing, which are product, price, place, promotion, which is how you sell sausages to supermarkets, that approach in medical devices isn't, it rarely works to the full benefit of everybody in those four other P's. So patient, provider, payer, and product benefits. So, and you can break it down into so many different levels. And how long do we have? But making sure that the technology is safe for patients, it's effective for patients. It has to be something that's better than what else is out there, ideally. Often companies just focus on cheaper, but I'm looking for what I've been doing, spending my last many decades of finding technologies to solve NHS problems. So focusing on patient need, better outcomes, fewer complications. When I say better outcomes, not just immediate outcome benefits of having a less invasive, faster recovery, reducing recovery time, but also the longer efficacy side of it as well. And if you get that right, there's a really good reason for patients to be on your side and support you on your journey. Then you've got the provider of care benefits, and we talked on the other podcast about the absolute dire demand on the healthcare systems, particularly hospitals, in capacity, staffing. With the hidden waiting list and the waiting list as it is, it's about how do we make them work smarter? How do we benefit them by changing what they're doing today? And then from the payer perspective, they're the people that pay the hospitals to treat the patients, and you could call them ICBs, CCGs, clinical commission groups. All these names, but they're just bloody payers.
Yeah.
So literally, the payer of care, whoever they may be called now or in the future, needs to benefit from paying for that, and that's. It's changing slightly to being, and the good thing about the NHS is it's changing to be more about the long-term patient benefit of paying for that treatment, not just short-term. And then, as I say, commercializing, you have to make sure that your technology is you're going to be able to continue to make it. People are going to keep on buying it. You're going to be able to have enough money for your shareholders, for your investors, and you're going to have enough money to survive in challenging business environments, wherever they may be. And you've also got to be on the lookout for the next generation. So it's all really multi-directional. It's like spinning plates like you'd never believe.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And so it's not just for the benefit of the medtech company understanding the access to the market, but actually ultimately it is for the patient's benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. Patients are at the front of it. And as we mentioned earlier, in America, there's also another P benefit, and that's physician benefit. In other healthcare systems, doctors get paid to do things and they have to benefit financially from doing things as well. But let's focus on the UK.
Yeah. So everybody's involved in this. The decisions that are made across the entire NHS network are all sort of feeding into the reason why market access is so important to the industry. Okay, so moving on from that then, can you kind of, I know this is probably a big ask as well, but can you kind of walk us through the steps that a medtech company would go through in terms of getting their product to market or, accessible to the patient?
Yeah. So I can talk about how a lot of them do it today and talk about how I think they should be doing it. But often today, the focus is on the excitement of the technology, the thought that it would solve an NHS problem, and the theory of being able to sell lots of them very quickly and make lots of money. And often that doesn't happen when people don't think enough about the commercialization and the reimbursement, getting the thing paid for story. The focus is often on the clinical story, showing through science that a technology works. So, if you think about the pharmaceutical industry approach to market access, they do the health economics first. The reason they do that is to help to define the population who will benefit the most. So you have a condition, and a condition may be treated with 5 or 6 different comparators. It's about which one should they be after, which therapy or drug are they going to replace. And by understanding that, and if you focus on the most needy population that are the most expensive, with a reasonably high volume, that could be a good starting point, because it enables you to charge more for your solution. So often there's a detachment between that, because the whole commercializing thing is like, oh, we're not here to make money. We're like, we're trying to invent things. All the websites say we care about patients, but they are all businesses. And without businesses and without technologies, you don't get a healthcare system that's helped patients live an additional, 5 or 6 years since the 80s or whatever the numbers were.
Yeah.
So, really, my advice to any company is, yes, get an idea, but then start working out whether it's a viable business in terms of, by understanding the population you're after, the characteristics about the patient and the treatments they're having, and then trying to look at the monetary value of where your product would need to work to make it a viable business. In other words, by doing early economic modelling, you can work out what the value drivers are to do your research in, and you can also work out how well your technology will need to work to achieve a price in the pricing corridor that gives you that insight into where you want to launch it. Right. Where is it where you can sell it for the highest price to the biggest market with the most needy population in a healthcare system that has a simple regulatory and reimbursement pathway. That's how market access should be thought about globally. But often companies, and particularly in the UK, they get grants and funding to do research to bring products to market. And often, because of the structure of the system and because of the pricing, because of some of the inflexibilities around payment and health technology assessment, it might not be the right place to start. Right. For all the reasons we talked about earlier, FDA first, investment, opportunity, it's changing. It's changed a lot. So that's a bit of a starting point for people to start thinking about processes, health economics up front, and think of the commercialization, the reimbursement strategy really, really early on, and focus on that as much as you're focusing on the regulatory aspects, which are normally the next hurdle for these companies to go through to make sure that they get regulatory approval. UKCA, CE mark, FDA approval, that's the next thing they naturally look at. But there doesn't appear to be enough people in market access within a lot of these companies. They have boards of people that are clinical, but that sort of angle of the commercializing, things I talked about earlier are really important.
So there's a real lack of people who've got that financial or that market understanding, working in these companies, particularly SMEs, because we know that 95% of medtech companies in the UK are very small businesses. Small. Yeah. There may be one-man bands who are doing everything. Yeah. So it's really a real struggle for them to find time, isn't it, to do this. So we need to have more people in the profession that have got that financial, that market background to be able to support these small companies. Yeah.
I mean, going back to the whole pricing thing and the thing about business and understanding healthcare systems, payers and patients. So a couple of stories to share. I've got to be quite careful about what I can't say too much specifically about these companies, but in my previous role, there were a couple of examples. One of a company that had a device that was able to give the paramedic the knowledge of where to take a patient with a suspected stroke, because there's two types of stroke, and the worst one is where you have to remove the clot physically with wires, called thrombectomy. By not treating strokes appropriately, the longer the brain is starved of blood and oxygen, the worse your neurological outcomes are going to be. So it's always about speed of treatment with a stroke, and getting the patient treated so that they don't have long-term disabilities. And we were working with a company in California that had invented a visor that was able to differentiate between different types of strokes, which gave the paramedic the ability to know to take that patient to a neurological centre for physical thrombectomy. And the pricing strategy of the company was based on, well, we looked in the back of ambulances and the most expensive piece of kit's about 20,000 quid. So we don't want to go above that. So that's our price. And I said, are you really sure? Wow. So we, at the time, this is a few years ago now, at the time I managed to connect with a guy I've been working with for many years now called Mehdi Javanbakhsh, who's a health economist. And he'd been working in Newcastle where they were doing lots of stroke research and paramedic stroke triage. We sort of did some early modelling and we could justifiably put that device on every ambulance in England for £116,000 cost neutral. So that's an idea of the value of a technology. If you really, versus a marketing questionnaire, or people used to do, well, let's do some payer interviews, or let's talk to doctors and see how much they're prepared to pay for it. They're not buying it. It's the healthcare system that's buying it, or they do some marketing. So how much are your competitors selling it for? And it's just like nonsense. It's not scientific.
It's not reality.
It's not reality.
Yeah.
So there's that example. We had another technology that we worked with where the company's device was similar to, in its mode of action, to another one that was used in a totally different indication. And they decided to tell the market, the investors, everybody, that their device was worth £18,000. And we said, we don't think it is. But they said, well, look, we can't afford to do the health economics. We're not doing it now. We haven't got the money. We're going to spend millions on a clinical trial. So they've spent millions on the clinical trial. They never collected the value drivers. And when they did come back to us 2 years later and we used the evidence that they generated in the clinical research, we put it into a modelling scenario with 8 of the best health economists in the world, and as I would say, and we couldn't get any higher than 4,500. And they told the markets that the product was worth 18. So here's the impact of not knowing what your product's worth.
Yeah.
And by just thinking faster, by just thinking it's cheaper and better is just nonsense. And everything virtually, I reviewed 137 decks of companies from a value perspective through my MedTech Innovator work, and most of them are just claiming their product's cheaper and better. But where is it in the world that you pay less for something that's far better? Prove either. Do you know what I mean? It's
I wanted to come on to that because obviously this episode of the podcast is called Cheaper and Better.
Yeah.
And I wanted to kind of get an understanding of that, about what you mean by cheaper and better, and particularly in the context of the NHS.
Yeah.
And also in terms of the fact that the NHS is very different to any other healthcare service. We have taxpayers' money that is being used. So we need to ensure that their money is being used most effectively to look after the people of the UK. So how do providers like the NHS balance better and cheaper? How, what is the balance on the other side of the scale from being better and cheaper?
Well, I think that, the NHS has been forced down this route of trying to work out what they're buying from a value perspective, purely because the industry has failed to show the value of what they're selling. So we talked about value-based procurement. Where else in any other healthcare system in the world do the buyers work as hard as they do to work out the value of what they're buying? Surely if the industry was showing the value of what they were selling and showing the long-term value and the clear benefits of using technologies, it would protect them so they could win, grow and protect their business, which is so important now with the Chinese, stuff starting to filter into the market. If they sell on price, they'll just be valued on price, and unfortunately that's how a lot of medical device companies work, even the biggest ones. And by you have to understand your customer, and the beauty with our NHS is there's no better data probably in the world of understanding what the system wants, what the waiting list sizes are, what it's done historically is all there, but nobody really looks at it. And I've had some quite interesting I've done some experiments, actually. I haven't talked about this so far, but let's just say a couple of years ago, I went to a very large medical meeting in the area of vascular surgery. And I decided to hide my badge and talk to some of the people, the attractive people on these exhibition stands selling their wares and pretend to be an NHS business manager. And it was a real eye-opener. So I'd go up to a stand, pick up a product, start looking at it, and people say, sorry, who are you? And I said, yes, sorry, I'm the vascular directorate manager for St George's Hospital. Oh, really? It was complete lies. And they said, oh, really? Yes. I said, one of my doctors, Mr. That's Right, was asking me about this. Why should I buy it? Well, they come in a box of 10 and they're green and we're the best and we're cheaper. It's like, right, so what else have you got that helps me to make a decision to change your product? Well, we think we can reduce length of stay. Oh, really? Now, how many days can you save me? I don't know. Why don't you know? Well, we don't know. I said, anything else it can do? Yeah, well, we're half an hour less time in operating theatres. Great. So what is that going to mean to me? Don't know. I'll just get my boss. And one of these very large medical device companies, I had 11 people that couldn't answer a question about why I should buy their product outside of the clinical fact that it was nice, but they couldn't translate what that thing was doing for me. And in the end, I told them who I was and got my badge out and said, you don't know about the NHS, do you? And I was actually a shareholder of that company. So this is what we're facing. These are the biggest companies with stands that are wider than your house. I mean, literally from one end to the other. They spent tens of thousands of pounds on promoting how great they are, but they know nothing about the customer. And that's fairly typical across most of the medical device industry. And it's sad. So, yeah, you need to understand your customer. There's data running through it. Study what you're going to solve and then sell the problem you solve, not the product.
That's a really powerful message. I mean, we apologise if it was St George's that you
no,
were.
it wasn't.
You were
Nothing to do with St George's. Right. It was wrong of me to do it, but I just thought I'd practice, hide the badge.
Yeah,
whether it was right or wrong,
I mean, a secret shopper.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting example of when you go to many of these shows and you're asking questions that there may not be the right questions to the right people, right? Because most of the people on the stands are salespeople.
They are.
Doing their job very well, but they don't necessarily know the end user or indeed, not just the end user, but the patient.
Well, they don't know what the industry expects the clinician to sell their product up the line. So we've already worked out that particular company with 11 people couldn't answer basic questions about what my hospital was doing or what they could even estimate do to make it a case for me to change products and to possibly spend more money because the product was more expensive. So the industry expects these doctors who are treating patients to put their business case forward through a complicated multi-departmental, multi-stakeholder environment, which can lead to a payer engagement. And if they can't get that story right, but if you look at the marketing, next time you look around an exhibition, look at what they're saying about their product. And I took pictures of this and of what they are saying about their product. It's like, we're now 7 French gauge. So what? We're now, we're less invasive. So what? What does that mean for me? If I'm a hospital manager or a payer, what does that mean for me? You're focusing on the person that uses it and expecting them to do all the work. You need to think wider than just the operator. You need to think about the other people that are ultimately going to make that decision to change. And it's something they all miss. And I have a lot of fun doing that, but maybe I should do it as a full-time job. But literally, I do invest in medtech myself. And if as a shareholder, faced with a company that I've invested my own money in that can't communicate their value and solution to a person who runs a budget in a hospital is pretty poor.
Yeah.
And so this is where industry needs to up the game. The people interested and involved in this industry need to think beyond the clinical and think about the business and the challenges of getting things into healthcare systems. It's the same in America. They have these things called value analysis committees where people sit down in management and hospitals and make decisions about changing from one product to another or introducing new treatments. So it's something you can't shy away from, but to focus beyond the product is what I'd say.
Just as an aside here then, and this is kind of a subject area that the engineering community, particularly biomedical engineering community, has been talking about quite a lot recently. Yeah. Do you think that we have not got the right people trained for these roles? Are we having a workforce and skills issue here? or is this just more of an education thing that we need to educate these people when they do go to look at products or they're selling products? They need to have a different mindset. Is there or a bit of both?
No, it's a really great question, Helen. I think that there needs to be a greater awareness of the complexities of selling things like medical devices over, marketing, which is where the problem lies. That sort of product price place promotion process. We're dealing with science. We're dealing with long-term problems. We're not just selling sausages to people who are hungry. It's like, I think there needs to be a greater recognition of the skill. And the problem is, and as I see it, and a lot of the people that I've been engaging with, I'm 50, 58, and I'm talking to CEOs and they're my age. 20, 30 years ago, when Tony Blair was pumping loads of money into the healthcare system, it was like go into the operating theatre, do a trial, take the department out for a curry. The following week, you get a purchase order and you would change the account. They were great days, literally, but it's all changed now.
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, you can't even go into a hospital. So these people that are at this level remember those days and think that's how it's done. It's all about relationships. It's all about KOLs. It's all about the big hospitals and the recognition. But often a lot of the work that I've done is finding people through proper data research, finding centres that need a technology. They may be the rural areas that we talked about in the last podcast. May not be a London problem or a Lincoln problem or whatever. We're in Lincoln. It's like finding the future people that are going to be on your journey with you and are going to be the spokesperson from a clinical perspective and help them to make their lives easier and understanding how they're going to sell the product up the line if you can't get in front of those stakeholders, which most industry don't. So pharma talk to payers all the time. They're always talking to the whatever they might want to acronym themselves as ICB, ICSs, CCG, Clinical Commission Group, whatever they keep changing names to. They're always in there because they can go in, they can say, this is our drug, this is your population, this is what you're paying at the moment, this is what we can do it. And by the way, we've modelled the impact of the change on this population, less side effects, better long-term outcomes, whatever. They're the experts at it. So what I'm saying is nothing new. It's been used by pharma industry for decades, but the med tech just don't seem to invest in that really important part of the journey of the science of market access. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. In all your years of being in this particular sector, Mike, what, drawing on all of that knowledge, and you've talked about the P's and things, but what would be, speaking out there to our viewers now, what would be the key pointers that you would want them to take away from this podcast today? And what lessons do you think the NHS procurement community, perhaps, who might be listening to this, could learn from some of the advice you could give?
Yeah, gosh, if I was in procurement, I'd have so much fun because I'd just tell them all to go away until they bring me a proper validated business case or why I should change and that sort of thing. But I think, and we'll show the slides on this. So the first slide is about, the whole concept of market access, how to make something fly, and so we're all trying to solve a patient problem. So we're trying to treat a condition. So population health is what we're trying to do, solve a problem in knee pain. The other part of it is on the left hand side is the other circle, which explains the quality of care. So they're all the reasons why healthcare systems should change from what they are today. And what are those quality of care benefits? What are they, and who are they for? So focusing on the right population, subpopulations, geographical populations in some cases. But what are those quality of care? What are those value drivers? What are the things that will make a healthcare system change from what they're doing today? And then the other part of it is affordable for society. And when all those three things are looked at together, you'll see on the slide, the best decisions in a health tech market access strategy is where those three things are looked at together. The problem we have particularly in the UK, is we have a healthcare system, or we have an industry that focuses on, we're going to solve this knee pain problem and we're cheaper, without bringing in those other value drivers, without putting monetary value or system value or outcome value benefits in a story that helps them to have a price that's justifiable. So that's the sort of theory of how to think about what you're doing, and making sure that you when you develop the evidence, you go after the value drivers, and you think of it beyond the beyond the clinical. So that's probably a good starting point to think of that.
Mike, I think that's a wonderful place to end not just this podcast, but all 3 of the podcasts we've done today. It's been wonderful to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming into the studio today. It's been great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.